Our next guest, Mike Milbury, remembers the 80s like I do. Mike Milbury is brought to you by Shaw's and Star Market, perfecting the art of fresh, by findmassmoney.gov, and by John Sewer, the name to know when your drains don't flow. And he joins us on the Harbor One hotline this morning. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, the 80s are just a little bit hazy for me, Greg.
The 80s are hazy. They're hazy for some, yeah.
They are, but I must say, I'm like Wiggy. I don't like to fly. And after listening to your segment just a few minutes ago, I don't know why I'd ever fly again. You know, for people cheating to try to get onto the plane, people like Santos stuffing their bag in the wrong baggage area. You got little dogs that people need to have to be comfortable on the plane. Somebody gets up and sticks their ass in your face on the way out the door. Plus, you got to wrestle a guy down because he's trying to climb out the emergency exit.
Yeah.
Where are the air marshals, by the way?
Yeah.
We don't have air marshals anymore.
Listen,
I guess we can't afford them. We have to pay debit cards to the migrant workers.
It's not like when you and I were kids and people used to dress up, throw on a suit, a nice dress, gloves.
No more.
It's not like that anymore.
All airlines need bouncers on them, like in nightclubs. And I'm talking about those big, burly bouncers, tattooed, everything.
I agree. And easily identifiable, not hiding somewhere in some road. Just like, here I am. If you want to fool around, let's do it.
Right. Like 4 or 5 of them on a plane. I guarantee you there won't be no outburst.
I like it. Sounds Trumpian.
Well, listen, back-to-back overtime wins for this team. We talked with you last week about their struggles when it came to winning these games in overtime. So I think it's a positive that they have done it twice in a row here. Although Scheim has been quick to point out multiple times this morning that they blew that lead in that game last night. So.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to Scheim because he's been barking like a mad dog here about the Bruins going out in the first round, and I want to know why.
Well, I feel like they struggle to hold leads at times. The defense has been porous at times and very porous at other times, and it's just like there's moments where they look like the best team in hockey, and yet there's also moments where they look like the Phoenix Coyotes. Like
exactly.
I
think you're exactly right. And it's like they're like Sybil now. You remember the movie Sybil? With Sally Field with all these different personalities? Yeah. Swayman said it last night. It's one of our identities. Yeah, it's one of like 17 identities. I don't know which identity I'm going to have. I mean, going into the game last night, Lindholm had no points in 5 games. I don't know what's happened with his injury, but Coyle had no points in 5 games. Zacha had 1 point in 5 games. And DeBrusk had no points in 5 games. I mean, it was like the well had gone dry. And, you never know what you're going to get with these guys. But God bless them, they keep coming back from the dead like Lazarus and make you feel like they could actually do something. But I don't know if they have the staying power to go deep into the playoffs, but they're head scratching.
Well, when it comes to the salary cap and the opportunity for Don Sweeney to do something to make this team better, can he get a legit big defender? I mean, is that what you think the number one need is? That's what I think.
Well, yeah, that would be certainly helpful, and so would another guy that can put the puck in the back of the net. But the problem is, what are his assets to deal? He's dealt away a lot of first-round picks. They don't have a pick until the 4th round this year, I think. They've given away some in future years, but people want some draft picks that come up pretty quickly, not down the road. They don't seem to want to trade Ullmark. That doesn't seem to be in the picture. I have no idea where they are with DeBrusk. He's the ultimate Sybil on this team. One game he looks like a world beater, like last night, and the next game you can't find him. So do they want to pay $6 million to this guy for the next 5 years or so, or are they going to trade him? He could be a possible guy to move, but if you move him, you're going to create a hole in his position, even if it's not always a position that he fills as well as he should. And they have no money to spend. So he's got a whole bag of dirty laundry that he's got to clean up in order to make some moves. He's in a tough spot. It's not going to be any kind of a situation like last year when he was a rainmaker.
Do you think internally he and Cam looked at this season going into it as a rebuilding season?
I don't know how they could not have felt that there would have been a much deeper hurt with the loss of Krejci and Bergeron than there has been. Yeah. I mean, you got to give credit to to Sweeney for his off-season acquisitions. You got to give credit to the players like Coyle and Zaka who stepped up and they're not really in the right positions for me still. As much as Coyle has been great and I love him as a player, I don't want to be, down on him, but I just feel like they're not meant to be number one and number two centers, but they've done a remarkable job of filling in, and I don't think Sweeney or Neely would have felt that this would have been as successful a season as it's been.
Mike, so that brings me to my question. Where is this team in the trajectory towards, being exactly where Sweeney wants them with Neely? Like, was this season supposed to be somewhat of a, 7 or 8 seed in the East and they're building towards something, or is this an opportunity now where it is Linus or someone else where they'll go all in again at the deadline?
I don't, that's a great question because we see them run through these dips and some high points, but I don't know where they're not consistent enough. Although that's, maybe I'm not right in saying that because they're like top of the conference again. I mean, there's no reason why when you look at the record, you should think anything but, well, listen, we should add to this mix because, the record is what the record says you are. But I'm like Scheim. I can't really start to feel strongly about this team going deep. But when McAvoy's playing at the top of his game like he is right now, and you got Pasternak still pumping in goals and Marchand producing like he is, you got core players that can drag some people along, and the goaltending clearly good. Why not? I guess why not? Even though in my heart I don't feel strongly enough that this is going to be a deep run.
When it comes to the several identity issue, is that a Jim Montgomery thing or is that a player thing?
I think that's a player thing. I think that's, some of these guys haven't been in this position before, especially at the lower end of the roster, and they have to learn about finding ways to get ready to play every game consistently. And I don't think they're quite there yet. And they've had a lot of shuffling of the deck on the bottom six forwards in particular. And so, but if they get leadership from guys like McAvoy and Pasternak and Marchand, maybe they can hold it together. They can find a way. I don't think it's a Montgomery issue. I think that would be unfair to him.
Well, I don't feel like maybe you disagree, but from the outside, it seems like leadership-wise, captain-wise, Brad Marchand has done a great job this season.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. But that doesn't mean as a captain you can turn players who aren't great players into great players. You can make them show up and work hard for every practice and every game, but you can't turn them into all-stars. But I don't think leadership is an issue here. I think my issue probably would be with depth of talent.
Mike, I think that's a good point when you say depth of talent. So then I guess the question I would ask is, if you are Sweeney and Cam and you come off a season where you had arguably the best, NHL record in history, how are you not saying we need to have expectations because we didn't do well in the playoffs, that our expectations have to be, this is not a rebuild, this is not a retool, we're going to continue to go for it because we have the makings of being able to win a Stanley Cup and not getting the guys that you maybe needed to replace Bergeron and Krejci before the season?
It's a good question, and I don't know that I have the answer, but I do know that Sweeney has been extraordinarily active in his tenure at the deadline. I mean, think back to the guys that he's picked up, guys like Rick Nash, not just last year, but a whole sweep of guys that he brought in. He's done it consistently, and it sort of tells me that he's going to try to do it. I just don't know if he's got the assets to do it, and why wouldn't he? As I mentioned earlier, if you look at the record, you look at the goaltending, that's a check mark, and you got a stud in Charlie McAvoy, disappointing Lindholm. Maybe he comes around and figures it out a little bit more. Maybe they can pick somebody up on the blue line or some secondary scoring, but they're still at the top of the conference, and it's wide open. But if you look down at the potential opponents for this team, teams like Detroit or Tampa or you name it, there's some sticky opponents down there that can make your life miserable. It's not going to be an easy run to a Stanley Cup final through the Eastern Conference. There's no surefire leader in the clubhouse.
You maybe get a guy like Noah Hannafin, who I know Calgary has told him they're not going to re-sign him. I think I don't know, some reports that his team reached out to the Lightning and said that's where he wants to be long term. But I mean, could you get a guy like that if you're Don Sweeney?
Well, you could, sure. I mean, if he's available, you pick up the phone and call. He's a local kid and might like to come home, but there's a problem. What assets are you giving up? What can you give up to get a guy that is a top 4, top 3 defenseman, however you want to describe him? He's not the burly, knock him dead kind of defenseman you were talking about earlier, but he's a quality player, and you'd certainly like to have him. But you got to deal with what assets you have to give up, and how do you fit him into your salary cap, which is problematic at this point.
So 2 weeks for the deadline, what do you think is the most likely outcome? Stand pat, make a big ad, or just something along the periphery?
If I'm guessing, I'm guessing that because of the situation they're in and the lack of assets, unless they decide to deal Jake DeBrusk, and based on last night, you'd say that why would they? Based on the previous 5 games, you say why wouldn't they? Yeah. Sybil again, but I think they're going to have a minor ad. I don't think it's going to be a big splash. I think it's going to be a minor ad. I hope it's a blue line guy like Greg keeps talking about, but I don't see them with the assets or the freedom of movement of money to be able to do something that's as dramatic as we saw last season.
All right, Mike Milbury, as always, a pleasure.
We'll talk you know what? Before I go, what do you call it dumbest of the day? Because every segment is dumber than the next one. Isn't that true?
Well, I mean, it's the dumbest of that particular day. I guess we could end it with the dumbest of the week or something. I mean,
I think you should try that. You're going to have to work hard to do it because some of those early dumbs are really dumb.